Hello and welcome to RGS Tracking the Review and Approval Processes. In this tutorial I'll be showing you how to track your ethics and governance applications through the review and approval process for ethics approval and site authorisation. Researchers can view the status of the project's ethical review in the project header. This will only display for the lead Human Research Ethics Committee or HREC. If the project involves an additional specialist HREC, the ethical approval status along with each site's authorisation status will be displayed in the Summary tab. Once an application has been added to an Ethics Committee meeting within the jurisdiction of a HREC, a grid will display all the ethics meetings and their review outcomes under Authorisation, Applications, Ethics Approval, and then by HREC name. If the HREC is internal to WA Health, a list of the committee meetings including subcommittees and alternative review committees will be displayed with the committee type, submission date, application closing date or ACD for that meeting, validation date and ethics committee meeting date. The review completion date is the date the Ethics Executive Officer or EEO enters the decision of the ethics meeting into RGS and drafts the outcome letter. The approval decision and the corresponding date will only be populated if the Ethics Committee's final decision for the project is approved or not approved. If approved by the HREC or Alternative Review Committee acting on its behalf, an approval expiry date will be displayed. If the project has a specialist HREC, they will be displayed as well. Each HREC will also have a HREC approval history, which will be displayed a status and the date it changes. The normal transition involves a progression from pending, under review, approved, closed to archived. But statuses may also include withdrawn when the researcher withdraws a project prior to approval, not approved by the HREC, temporary halt and early termination, which may be implemented by either the HREC or researcher, usually due to safety or recruitment issues. If the HREC is external to WA Health, only the approval history will be displayed, as external HREC meetings are not captured in RGS. As governance reviews do not involve meetings like ethics, once an application has been submitted to a Research Governance or RG office, a grid will display each submission and the submission's review outcome. This is displayed under Authorisation, Applications, Site Authorisation, RG Office, and then by site name. For each submission, the submission and the validation date will be displayed. This review may involve the assessment of one or multiple forms and documents based on what has been submitted by the researcher. Once a review has been conducted by the Research Governance Officer or RGO, the review completion date and the review decision will be displayed. This is not the validation decision. The authorisation decision and date will only be populated once the Chief Executive has made a decision on whether to authorise or not authorise the conduct of the project at the site. Each site will also have a site decision history, which will have similar statuses to ethics, except the word authorised is used instead of approved. Unlike the Summary tab, which displays review statuses and dates for Ethics Committee meetings and governance submission reviews, the Application tab displays the review statuses and dates for each individual submitted form and document. The status will keep updating as the form or document moves through the submission, validation, review, and approval or authorisation stages. If the form or document does not progress past one of these stages, for example when a new version is required, the last status will remain. The review completion date is when either the Ethics Committee or the RGO completes their review on valid forms and documents and enters their decision. Only the Ethics Approved or Governance Authorised forms and documents will have a date populated in the approval or authorisation decision date. The approval date against the ethics form will reflect the ethics approval date. And likewise, the authorisation date against the governance form will reflect the site authorisation date. Similar to the Summary tab, the Timeline tab displays Ethics Committee meetings and governance submission review grids. However, the total elapsed time in days for an ethics and governance review is calculated for each HREC, site and RG office. Each review has a separate row. The review time for each row is calculated and then is totaled, discounting any overlapping days. These are then displayed in a graph against a 60-day KPI for both ethics and governance, validation and reviews. For ethics, the timeframes are calculated for validation, review with clock, and review without clock. The review with clock uses a clock which stops when the HREC requests additional information, AIR, from a researcher or is waiting on forms and documents prior to making a final decision. This stop clock calculation better captures where the delays and review times are occurring, either with the research team or with the ethics committee or office. The review without clock does not use a stop clock and measures the total number of days from the first application closing date to the approval decision, where the ethics committee provides a decision of either approved or not approved. The 60-day KPI applies only to measurements with the clock. Site authorisation is similar to ethics with displays for each submission. Site authorisation times are displayed for validation, also review with clock, as well as review without clock, and lastly overall with clock. This includes both validation and review. In the Letters tab, all project members can view and print the ethics and governance, application letters and monitoring letters that have been emailed to the coordinating principal investigator and principal investigator. Select the letter to view it. At the bottom of the letter, you can view a signed copy or any attached documents, as well as being able to print the letter. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope you have found it helpful.